Welcome to Real Talk, where I give real answers to real questions from real worship leaders. If you are a real worship leader with a real question and you want a real answer, head right here and submit your question, and I might answer it on a future episode. Let's get into the questions. So, my church recently went through a merger with another church. The other church didn't have a building, but had a lot of families with young children and lots of nice folks. Overall, I feel the merger has been a blessing for everyone, but I'm struggling with having to share worship leading responsibilities now. I had been the lone worship leader in my church for the past 6 to 7 years. I have a team of folks, and we form a band and meet every Wednesday evening to rehearse. The new folks added a few singers and 2 guys who lead with acoustics, same as me, but only one of them is currently actively leading at the moment. The other guys had an agreement to swap months leading, and now that's been thrust upon me too. These months off feel crazy long, and it's been a continually difficult adjustment. I really do love leading and singing, and I always looked forward to meeting on Wednesday as a therapeutic time of worship. I don't really feel comfortable joining in while the other guy is leading, and I'm just kind of frustrated and bummed out. What advice, perspective, and/or encouragement do you have? Thanks. Tim from PA. Always good to hear from another worship leader from PA. By the way, do you know that only people from Pennsylvania call Pennsylvania PA? I'm from Pennsylvania, by the way, and I always call it PA, and people are like, what are you talking about? I don't think any other state does that. It's not like if you're from Texas, you're like, I'm Tim from TX. I don't know. Just made me think of that. But hello to a fellow Pennsylvanian. May William Penn be with you forever. So what would I do in your situation? And I'm just going to be honest here, and this isn't like something, I don't know if you can deal with this, handle this, but the way it sounds, and this isn't uncommon when 2 churches merge, but the way that it sounds is that you're still operating as if you were 2 churches and you are just in the same building. And I don't know if that's true in every area of your ministries, but in your worship ministry, that's what I hear. It's like, we're going to have worship team from church A lead this month and worship team from church B lead this month. And so just from the health of your church perspective, and this is me speaking, I suppose, pastorally, it does not sound like a healthy thing to communicate, to say we're going to have worship team from church A, previous church A, lead this month, and then worship team from previous church B lead this month, because that to me does not say unity. If your churches merged together, the primary focus of that merging, especially at the start, should be how can we create a sense of unity between these groups. And in my mind, it is not to split up the worship teams. It would be the worship team is like literally probably the most visible team in the church. Every single Sunday, people are going to see it. And so we can't have church A and church B anymore. We have to have one church, whatever the church that is called now that you're merged, right? Like, this is the blank church, the PA church worship team, not 2 separate things. So I don't know if that's, if you can do anything about that, but if you hold any weight in the conversation, I would definitely bring that up as a primary point of emphasis, not because you want to lead worship every week. And I get what you're saying, by the way. I'm not like you. I don't think you're saying I need to lead worship every week. I think you're just saying I enjoy it and I don't get to do it, and so now I feel like lost because I used to lead worship every week. I think that that's an okay feeling to feel. I'm telling you this from a church health perspective. You need to find a way to integrate your church, or you will still only have 2 separate churches. And for instance, the one worship team's going to do worship songs one way, and you're going to do worship songs another way, and you will never be a united church because you're communicating from the stage that there are still 2 separate churches. Okay, I've harped enough on that. So if I were you, just to continue on that thought for a moment, but practically for you, I would go to the other worship leader and communicate what I just communicated, because that's what I believe. Whenever two churches come together, we should be united now. And I would talk to the other guy who's leading worship, and he might be perfectly fine with it, and say, listen, we need to be on the same page. We need to set the standard of unity, the picture of unity, the example of unity in our church of coming together. And so personally, I feel like the best way to do that would be for us to not lead 1 month here, 1 month here, but at the very least, take turns every other week, potentially. But ideally, we would integrate the two teams. If we're going to be one church, we need to act like it. So definitely have that conversation with the other worship leader and get their thoughts on it. See what they think, because they might be like, that makes complete sense. And then what happens? Then you're on to finding a new rhythm for your worship leading schedule. Now, from there, what would I do? Assuming you get this person on board, you've got to have a plan for implementing those two teams together. Not just you and the guy leading together, but the entire team leading together. So talk to the other worship leader and figure out, not only are we going to stop 1 month here, 1 month here with people leading differently, but we need to cross-pollinate the worship team members as well. And once again, I would do this all under the understanding. I was going to say guys, but it's not really a guys. It is like what needs to happen in your church. I would do it under the umbrella of church unity. So maybe the first step is having both worship teams getting together at the same time and talking to each other, learning from each other, playing through some songs together, and you start to intermingle those two worship teams until you become one worship team. That's probably where I would start. Just like you could start off not even saying, hey guys, we're going to stop having two teams, but just we want to come together on a Saturday morning to hang out. Both teams that lead worship, we're going to do it together because we are one church now. And that's a great way for people who are now in a combined church to connect. So ultimately, that's where I would move if I was in your position, to that structure of a worship team as one worship team, not two separate worship teams. In the short term, I understand that is frustrating for you to not lead worship in the church. I think the perspective that I would want to give you is to use this as a heart check to make sure that being the worship leader in your church hasn't become your identity. And it's not just like, I don't get to lead worship in church for this 1 month anymore, and so now I'm useless in the church. I'm sure you have other gifts that you could use in the church. And if you really love serving, then for those months that you don't lead worship, find somewhere else to serve. Or just enjoy being able to participate in a different way in your corporate worship gathering, because I know that you know that it is different being on stage leading worship than it is being in the congregation where you are worshiping along with everybody. You don't have as many responsibilities to think about. So I just encourage you to, first of all, heart check, has being a worship leader become my identity instead of being just a member of the church first and foremost. Second of all, just enjoy that time. Third of all, if you really still want to serve on Sunday mornings, find a different area to serve in for those months where you aren't leading worship. My church has a worship coordinator that suffers from anxiety. Many of the members, staff, and even the coordinator recognize that she suffers from this. This anxiety tends to leave team members never sure if things might change on a dime from Sunday to Sunday. I have been on the receiving end of this anxiety more than a handful of times. We have no communication between the pastors and teams, and when we go up to lead on Sunday, it seems to be an organized chaos. I feel she is not the right person for the job, but since she's popular within the church, she remains in leadership. Even by her word, she was thrown into the role. How do I approach this in a healthy manner to point out that this isn't for her? Well, first of all, I wouldn't jump to the conclusion that this isn't for her. I think that's not the starting point, at least. I think, and I'm not sure, once again, the structure of your church. Maybe this is just a volunteer worship leader, and I get that it's frustrating for you as a worship team member who has to adapt and be flexible. So I don't think the healthiest direction to come at tackling this problem is, hey, you have anxiety, you aren't right for the job. When I say it like that, which is pretty much what you're communicating in this question, that's never going to be a winning argument, right? I think it starts with, I think you can air your concerns. I don't even think you have to bring anxiety up, but I think you can just say to her, probably speak to her if she's the worship leader, the worship team leader, and you're a worship team member. Say, man, when things change on Sunday at the last second, like, it really messes me up. I do not do well adapting like that, and it would be so helpful for me to have a little bit more preparation ahead of time. So I don't know what that looks like. Maybe we need to have a plan B that just exists. If you can't be here on a Sunday because of something, then this happens. But it's really hard for me to learn Saturday night that things are changing and then I have to adapt on the fly. If a worship team member came up to me and said that, I would be like, you're so right. I'm sorry, I need to do a better job leading the team. As opposed to if a worship team member came up to me and was like, Spencer, you're a horrible leader. You have anxiety and you can't lead our worship ministry well. Do you see the two differences between those responses? So, respond in love. I get the frustration. I'm not going to tell you, though, that this person shouldn't be serving in ministry because they have anxiety. I think the likely thing that needs to happen is that they just need to learn how to manage what happens if they aren't there on a Sunday morning. So, as always, if you have a problem with someone in the church, especially a leader in the church, don't go behind their back sowing discord among, and I'm not saying that you're doing this, but if you are, stop it. If you're going behind this person's back and talking to all the worship team members like, man, this person's a horrible leader. She's never here on Sunday. She's not even prepared when she shows up, blah, blah, blah. No, just go. The biblical response to when we have a problem with someone in our church is that we go to them directly and we say, this is the problem that I'm having. What can we do to find a resolution? Now, I have no segue, but I just created a new resource for worship leaders. It's completely free. It's called 5 Speaking Transitions You Can Use This Sunday. I'm really excited about it. I put a lot of work into it. It's like a 10-page document with 5 speaking transitions you can use this Sunday. You can plug and play them, and in learning those speaking transitions, it's not just like a script that you memorize, but I will teach you how to sound authentic, because you will be authentic, because we're not memorizing the script, we're memorizing a set of bullet points. You'll learn more about that in the document. And so you can speak these speaking transitions, sound authentic. They're based on scripture, so you don't have to worry about saying something unscriptural because they're based on scripture. And number 3, they are what I think are the perfect length for a speaking transition, somewhere between anywhere from 30 seconds to a minute and a half. So check out the 5 worship speaking transitions you can use this Sunday, linked in the description below. It's completely free. Other than that, thanks so much for joining me. Until I see you in the next video. Keep leading worship well.